Imagine waking up tomorrow, stepping out your front door, and suddenly realizing that the ground you were standing on isn't made of dead rock and dirt.
Yeah, that it's actually alive.
Right. Imagine realizing that the landscape stretching out in front of you is actually a living, breathing creature. And, it's been quietly watching you your entire life.
It is a wild concept to start your day with.
It really is. And today, we're opening up a piece of source material that asks us to do exactly that. We are looking at this deeply poetic, really mythological text centered on what it calls the golden primordial Mother Earth goddess.
Which is such a powerful title.
It is. And our mission today isn't just to, read you a pretty story. We want to explore how this text fundamentally shatters our object-oriented, sterile view of the physical world and replaces it with a completely different lens for understanding the ground beneath our feet, the passage of time, and our own deeply complicated place in the universe. So, okay, let's unpack this.
I am thrilled we are diving into this.
Yeah.
What we had here is, honestly, a radical paradigm shift.
Yeah.
We are so conditioned to see the Earth as a stage.
Hmm.
The reliable, entirely dead background material upon which human history just happens to play out.
Or we see it as inventory, like real estate and a raw material.
Exactly. Just stuff for us to use. We're going to look closely at the rich metaphors in this text to understand the why behind this ancient, really visceral perspective. One that views nature not as a resource, but as a towering, undeniable presence.
The text establishes this presence on a timeline that I honestly had trouble wrapping my head around. It talks about an existence before time itself.
Right, before our concept of time.
Yeah. The phrasing is that before the first mountain even pressed itself upward from the deep, she was already breathing.
Wow.
She didn't begin. She simply was. But how does a text even begin to describe the physical reality of a being like that?
Well, by completely blurring the line between geology and biology.
Oh, interesting.
In this framework, they're one and the same. It forces the reader to look at the raw materials of the Earth, not as inert elements on a periodic table, but as living anatomy.
The literal translations of her body in the text are incredibly vivid. It states that the soil was her flesh before it even knew it was soil. And the rivers were her milk before water had learned to run. And the stone, this part really got me. The stone was her bone before the concept of hardness had even been born into the world.
Let's linger on that idea for a second. Before the concept of hardness had been born,
Yeah.
philosophically, that is a massive decentering of the human experience.
Oh.
Well, we categorize a rock as hard based purely on how it resists our own physical touch.
Right. It's relative to us.
Exactly. It's defined by our interaction with it. But the text is implying that her physical essence precedes our human categorization entirely.
Wow.
Before there were any hands to touch the stone, before there was anything to measure resistance, it was simply her bone. It existed for itself, not for us.
It doesn't stop at just the physical tactile elements either. The text actually maps her mental and emotional states onto the flora and geography of the world.
Yes, the psychological mapping is fascinating.
It describes the moss as her gentlest thought. The fern is her oldest memory. And trees, the text claims that trees are her longing made solid.
Her longing made solid.
And that every root driving downward is just a tree trying to drink its way back to her. But I have to push back here. We are taught that trees grow upward, right? They reach for the sun, for photosynthesis.
Yeah, the biological imperative.
Right. So this makes it sound like they're desperately trying to go backward.
Well, that inverted perspective is the entire point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We see a tree growing toward the sun as a triumph of individual life, like an escape from the dark ground. This text suggests the opposite.
So it's tethered.
The tree is constantly tethered, constantly seeking the dark warmth of the mother it grew out of. It reframes the forest not as a collection of independent organisms reaching for the sky, but as the physical manifestation of the Earth's own internal longing.
So the biological mechanics of roots searching for water are reinterpreted as a psychological desire for connection. Well, if a fern is a memory and a tree is longing, the geography is where her feelings get absolutely immense.
They really do scale up.
The text says that mountains are just an unexpressed grief that pushed upward to become a peak. A joy with nowhere to go spread wide and became a plateau.
I love that image.
And volcanoes are her clean, honest, ancient rage for which she never apologizes. Now, wait a minute.
Yeah.
A volcano destroys entire ecosystems. It wipes out human cities. Framing that as just her clean, honest rage feels almost cruel, doesn't it? How are we supposed to reconcile that?
by recognizing that the cruelty is entirely a human projection.
Hmm.
When we look at a mountain range, we usually think of tectonic plates crashing together over millions of years, right? A violent mechanical process.
Yeah, just geology doing its thing.
Right. And when a volcano erupts, we call it a natural disaster because it disrupts human life. But by framing that peak as unexpressed grief and the volcano as unapologetic rage, the text strips away our human-centric moral judgments. She is not a passive backdrop, nor is she malicious. She is the primary emotional actor in the universe.
Wow.
To her, a volcanic eruption is simply an expression of what she cannot contain in her depths. She doesn't apologize because it is her nature, and her emotional reality is simply on a scale that doesn't account for human zoning laws.
That is, wow. Okay, so she is massive, deeply emotional, and entirely self-contained. But if she is self-contained, how does she interact with anything outside of herself? Because she does.
She absolutely does.
The text makes the specific point to say she doesn't actually need the rain because all moisture already lives within her. So why does she interact with the sky at all?
Because the interaction isn't based on a mechanism of survival. It's based on an act of cosmic reciprocity.
Cosmic reciprocity.
Yeah. Since she is already the source of all water, the rain takes on a totally different meaning. The text beautifully describes rain as the sky returning something to her. It is the above world remembering its debt.
The imagery there is striking. When it rains, she opens her pores like skin in heat. She acts as this continuous membrane through which all things pass, catching whatever the sky returns, which sets the stage for a really strange event in the narrative.
It does, a major shift.
Because into this perfectly balanced rhythm, something new arrives. A small, bright, terrified being falls from the sky.
A very specific, very vulnerable something.
Yeah.
And her reaction to it is profound.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She catches it. She doesn't know what it is, but she feels its terror. It is frightened of the dark, frightened of falling, frightened of ending, so she just holds it in the dark, silent comfort of her soil. But I struggled with this next part.
Which part?
The text says that when this being finally wakes up, it looks at her, and it specifies that in this exact fraction of a second, looking happened in the world.
Yes.
Was the universe literally blind before this? What does that actually mean?
What's fascinating here is it means we are witnessing the birth of consciousness as a relational act.
Really?
Yeah. For eons, she existed without ever needing to be seen. She didn't require external validation to be a mountain or a river. But the text is arguing that the universe was essentially blind because there was no subject-object relationship.
No, I see. There was no observer.
Exactly. When this vulnerable being wakes up and truly looks at the entity that saved it, the act of looking creates an entirely new phenomenon in the universe. Recognition.
Recognition. Okay, so the being isn't just seeing dirt, it's recognizing a presence.
Precisely. The looking itself communicates a message like, I know what you are the one who caught me.
Wow.
She didn't need to be seen, but she didn't mind it. From that singular moment of recognition, a relationship is forged.
And that leads to the birth of gratitude, and eventually language, because this falling being and the others that inevitably follow begin to build shelters in her, plant seeds in her skin, and feel her slow pulse.
If you start to interact with her directly.
Yeah, they begin to name her. They call her Mother Earth, the Dark One, the one beneath. I found it so poignant that the text notes she answered to all of those names, and she answered to none of them.
Right.
She didn't change who she was based on what they called her.
She simply continued to breathe. And that transition from the grand cosmic scale to a biological rhythm is crucial.
Why is that?
Because if you are a listener wondering how this vast, timeless entity relates to your actual day-to-day life, the text provides a direct answer. Her continuous eternal life force manifests in a way humans can physically experience.
The seasons.
Yes, we call it the seasons. The text describes the seasons literally as her breath made visible.
So we aren't just orbiting a sun on a tilted axis. We are riding the inhales and exhales of a massive body.
Exactly.
Let's walk through the mechanics of that breath. Spring is her exhale. It's this long release of warmth after the cold. The text says she cannot help but insist on green. It's her most natural expression. Then summer is her fullness. It's the held breath right at the peak of the exhale. It's maximum abundance, a state of total openness where she simply pours life outward.
But a breath cannot be held outward forever.
Right.
The body must eventually return to itself.
Which brings us to autumn, the beginning of the inhale. The text describes autumn as her spreading gold across everything like light on skin, revealing the color of herself fully known.
It's a beautiful transition.
And then we hit winter. Winter is her deep interior, her long-held breath on the inhale. She holds the seeds like secrets, and she holds the sleeping animals like unspoken words.
The imagery is so gentle.
It is. And if you are listening to this right now and you're someone who absolutely dreads winter, who hates the cold, the dark, and the feeling that everything is dead,
Hmm.
this text is basically asking you to rethink your entire biological reaction to that season.
It completely reframes our modern resistance to the cold. We treat winter like a failure of the environment.
Yeah, we really do.
We fight it with artificial light, central heating, and relentless productivity. We view the stillness of winter as an empty void where nothing is happening. But the text asks us to see it as a deliberate, knowing pause.
Knowing is the key word there. It says she waits at her own pace because she knows the green always returns.
Think about the psychological implications of that.
Okay.
If we view the ground beneath us not as frozen dirt, but as an active, nurturing force performing the immense effort of holding millions of fragile lives safe in the dark until the exhale can begin again, it changes our entire understanding of patience.
It really does.
The text points out that she holds the hibernating bear and the nesting bird without crushing them. Staying still isn't death. Staying still is an intensely active form of resilience.
We rely on that steady, predictable rhythm of breathing, but the text doesn't stay in that cyclical rhythm forever.
No, it doesn't.
It moves from the background maintenance of life to describe a singular, monumental event, a profound communication that came from the Earth's deep interior.
This is a fascinating pivot in the narrative. The text mentions a specific turning of years, a period that human astronomers and priests tried desperately to mark using standing stones, fire, and mathematics.
They were looking upward, trying to calculate the heavens.
But they were looking the wrong way.
Right, because the real event was happening beneath them. The text says she opened a door in the ground. And it emphatically insists this is not a metaphor.
That insistence is a signal to the reader. It demands we treat this event not as a poetic abstraction, but as a tangible, physical release of energy or knowledge into the biological world.
So she released an intelligence, something she had been composting in her depths for longer than human civilizations could even imagine. It was forged from the accumulated mineral wisdom of literally everything that had ever died, returned to her and transformed. But how did this intelligence actually travel?
That's the best part.
It didn't arrive via a burning bush or a booming voice from the clouds. The text says it traveled through the underground networks, through the roots, through the fungi, the dark web of connection.
So she basically used the mycelial network, the Earth's underground internet,
Yeah.
to upload a massive package of self-realization to the forest. It utilized the existing infrastructure of the natural world to deliver a message.
So rather than a sudden, flashy broadcast, this intelligence is passed like a slow-moving chemical signal, moving root by root, fungus by fungus, taking generations to cross a forest.
Exactly.
It's communication almost like a biological infection of wisdom. But the text gives this intelligence a very specific name. It calls it gold. And it explicitly clarifies it doesn't mean the metal. I'm struggling with the definition here.
It could be tricky.
If it's not the commodity that we mine and put in banks, what does this all mean? What is this gold intelligence?
Well, it is a complete redefinition of value. The text explains that true gold is the quality of light striking something that has been forged under immense pressure over an immense amount of time and has finally come through into its own true nature.
Oh, wow.
The intelligence she released was the realization of, I was always this even when buried. I was always this even in the dark.
I was always this, even in the dark. That gives me chills.
It strips away the economic definition of gold as something to be extracted and hoarded. In this paradigm, gold is the earned wisdom of surviving the dark.
Like the patience in winter.
Exactly. That is the patience we talked about during the winter breath. It is the resilience of taking every death, every fallen leaf, every bone, composting it under immense geological pressure, and turning it into deep mineral wisdom.
Amazing.
When she released that gold into the root systems, she was sharing the ultimate realization of self-worth that doesn't depend on being seen by the sun.
because she was golden in her depths where no light had ever entered.
Yeah,
She was golden when she caught the falling being, and golden when she held the sleeping bear in winter. It completely changes the experience of walking through a forest.
it really does.
You aren't just looking at wood and leaves, you are looking at the visible terminals of a massive, ancient, golden intelligence network that is slowly processing the wisdom of everything that has ever lived.
It demands a kind of reverence. Not a fearful, hierarchical reverence, but a deeply grounded, intimate one. We are walking on top of an active mind.
And what I appreciate most about the source material is that it refuses to just leave these grand mythological concepts floating in the abstract.
Right, it grounds it.
It brings it all directly back to your immediate physical reality, right now, to you, listening to this deep dive. The text ends by reminding us that the event of the gold rising wasn't the end of the story. She is still breathing.
The slow, rhythmic work of the earth continues, completely independent of human validation.
The text actually gives you a physical instruction at the end. It tells you to press your palms into her, press your ear to the ground, let yourself be held by the surface you walk on, because that surface is her body, and it has always been holding you, even before you knew to ask it to.
But there is a beautiful, stark humility in the text's final reminder.
What's that?
She will not perform for you. She has never performed anything. You cannot command the mountain to move, and you cannot rush the winter to end.
But the warmth is always there. The text calls it the original warmth that existed before fire, before anyone even had the biological hardware to invent words or name the sun.
Yes.
She was the warmth before any of that, and she will be the warmth after. It really makes you reconsider that dead concrete foundation we talked about at the very beginning.
Totally.
The ground isn't an object, it's a participant.
It leaves us with a totally different paradigm for interacting with our environment. And honestly, it raises an important question, something really worth sitting with as you go about the rest of your day.
Yeah.
If the Earth's most profound wisdom, that resilient golden intelligence we just talked about, travels slowly through deep underground networks of roots and fungi, taking lifetimes to transmit,
Right.
what vital messages might we be missing by constantly looking upward? We spend our entire lives staring at screens, looking up at the skies, getting caught up in the incredibly fast, fleeting anxieties of human events. What could we actually learn if we practice the quiet art of listening downward?